Hey, welcome back to the Leading Yourself podcast, and welcome to our final episode of this series on building confidence. And I have to say, I'm really proud of this month. I'm proud of the content. It's resonating with a lot of you. I think this is the month that I've got the most messages from all of you. But I'm also, and maybe even more proud, because if you've been here every week, if you listened to week one and did the small kept promise, if you walk into a meeting differently after week two, if you took even one rep in the area you've been avoiding after week three, you have done something that most people talk about and don't do. You showed up for yourself. And that matters. Now, before we go into today's episode, let me close the loop on where we've been, because this month was built very intentionally, and I want you to feel the whole thing, the whole arc. So week one, we talk about self-trust, the foundation. Confidence doesn't come before the action, it comes from the action. And the smallest unit of self-trust is a kept promise to yourself. On week two, we talked about executive presence, taking the self-trust we build and bringing it into the room. The shrinking, the internal audit, the softening, the waiting for the invitation. It's not who you are, it's a habit. And habits can be changed. Then last week, we talked about competence and confidence. We talk about the sequence correction, the act, build evidence, let the belief follow. That's the competence confidence loop. You don't think your way there, you do, you act your way there. And today, this is week 4, we bring it all together. We're doing your confidence inventory. And then we're opening up the floor for your questions, because so many of you have been writing in this month, and I want to actually sit with some of those because they're really good questions. Today's episode has 2 parts. Part 1 is a coaching session, just you and me, like we're sitting down over coffee and I'm walking you through the integration work. And then part 2 is your questions, real questions that come in this month, and I'm going to answer them as honestly as I can. All right, let's close the month. Let's go. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves, those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. To do something before we go any further, I want you to close your eyes just for a second. Or if you're driving, just soften your focus just a tiny bit. And I want you to imagine that you and I are sitting across from each other, not in a podcast, not in a classroom, just 2 people at a table, coffee in hand, whatever you're drinking, and nowhere to be, because that's how I want this to feel. This is not a lecture, this is a conversation. And in this conversation, I'm your coach. And we have one job for the next 15 minutes or so to help you actually see what you've built this month and what you've been carrying long before this month that you haven't been counting. Are you ready? Let's start. Okay, here's the thing. I've noticed in my years of coaching, and I want to name it before we do any of the inventory work because it reframes everything. Most people who come to me struggling with confidence are not struggling because they lack capability. They're struggling because there is a gap between what they've actually done and what they're willing to count as evidence of who they are. Let me repeat that one more time. Most people who seek help because they're struggling with confidence are not struggling because they lack capability. They're struggling because there is a gap between what they've actually done and what they're willing to count as evidence of who they are. The gap is not between their ability and what's required. It's between their track record and what they're willing to believe about themselves based on that track record. They did the hard thing. They got through it. They figured it out. And then they feel it under luck or circumstance or the help they had from other people, anything by themselves. And so the evidence exists, is real. It's documented in the story of their own lives, but they've been looking through it, right through it. Because somewhere along the way, they develop a habit of discounting their own wins and cataloging their own failures with much more precision. That's what we're fixing today. Not by manufacturing evidence that doesn't exist, but by actually looking at the evidence that does. So here's my first coaching question for you, and I want you to actually sit with it. Don't answer fast. In fact, if you're new here, if this is your first integration session, typically is the last episode of every month and every topic that we cover, what I suggest is that after I throw out a prompt, a question, you pause and you work on that question. And then you keep listening. Or you can listen through the whole thing and then just pause after each question and write your question in your journal so you can come back later and answer all of them. So here is the first question. What is something you can do today with ease, with genuine competence that you couldn't do 5 years ago? Not something someone gave you, not something that just happened to you, something you built, something that took reps and struggle and showing up even when it was uncomfortable. Hold that. Whatever came up, hold it. Because that right there is evidence. That is the competence confidence loop in your own life. That is proof that you are someone who learns things, who grows into things, who eventually gets to the other side of things that felt impossible once. And if you did it once, you can do it again in the next hard thing, whatever that is for you right now. Now, let's go deeper. I want to walk you through 3 categories of evidence, and I want you to actually do this. Not just listen, but actually think about your own answers. Pause the episode if you need to. As I said, get a piece of paper. This is the work. Okay, category 1, what you have survived. Think about the hardest thing you've navigated in the last, let's say, 3 years. Could be professional, could be personal, could be both at once, which is usually how the hardest things go. What was it? And what did it ask of you? I want you to think about what it actually required. Not just what happened, but what it demanded from you internally. The decisions you had to make with incomplete information. The moments you had to hold it together when part of you wanted to fall apart. The times you had to choose to keep going when stopping was an option. That's not nothing. That is a complete portrait of a person who handles hard things. And here's the question I really want you to sit with. Did you get through it? You're here, which means yes, you got through it. And getting through hard things is the most fundamental evidence of capability that exists. Not the thing going perfectly, not the thing going the way you planned, getting through it intact, having learned something, still standing. File that under evidence because it is. Okay, let's move on to category number 2, what you have built. This one is a little bit trickier because what you've built tends to become invisible to us over time. It becomes the water we swim in. The baseline we stop noticing because it's just how things are now. What exists in your life right now, in your work, in your relationships, in yourself, that you built on purpose? I want you to be as specific, not vague, not I've grown a lot, but what specifically did you build? A skill, a relationship, a team, a habit, a body of work, a reputation in a specific area, a practice that keeps you sane, a way of showing up that you had to deliberately chose over and over until it became yours. And I want you to notice you build that. Not luck, not timing, not the people around you, though they might have help, right? but it was you. Now, here's the follow-up. What did it cost you to build it? What did you have to push through? Because the cost is part of the evidence. The fact that it was hard and you built it anyway. That's not a footnote. That is a headline. A lot of us have a strange habit of only counting our wins if they came easily, as if struggle disqualifies the outcomes. As if the fact that something was hard means that doesn't fully count. It counts more because doing hard things is harder and you did them. Okay, category number 3, what you know. This is my favorite category and the one people are most likely to skip. What do you know, really know in your bones from your own experience that you haven't been counting as experience? Here's what I mean. There are things that you know from study, from credentials, from what you've been officially taught, and we tend to count those. We put them on the resume. We reference them in conversations. But there's another category of knowing. The things you know from living, from being the person who navigated what you've navigated, from trial and error and failure and iteration and finally cracking something open. What do you know about how to hold a team under pressure because you've done it? What do you know about how to rebuild after a setback because you've had to? What do you know about having a hard conversation, about making a decision with no good options, about showing up for people even when you're running on empty? Because that's been your actual life. That knowing is expertise. It might not have a certificate attached to it, but it's real, it's earned, it's embodied knowledge that took years of your life to acquire. So I'll ask you again, what do you know that you've been underselling? Because the people I work with who feel least confident are almost never the least capable. They're the ones who have been most rigorous about dismissing what they know, the most thorough about excluding their own experiences from the evidence pile. Stop doing that. Put it in the pile. It belongs there. Okay. We've been sitting here together and you've been thinking about what you've survived, what you've built, what you know. And I want to give you one more question before we close this part of today's podcast episode. This is the integration question, the one that connects all of the month, the self-trust, the presence, the competence, into something you can actually carry forward. If the person you were a year ago could see who you are today, not just what you've accomplished, but who you have become, what would she notice? I ask this question because I find that we are much kinder observers of other people's growth than we are of our own. We can see when someone else has grown. We can name it. We can celebrate it. But when it's us, we minimize it. We say things like, I still have so far to go, or I'm still not where I want to be, or compared to so-and-so, I haven't really done much. And I want to challenge that today, not because having more to go isn't true. Probably it is. There's always more to go. But the fact that you have further to travel doesn't erase the distance that you've already covered. You are not at the starting line. You have been walking. Sometimes running, sometimes crawling, sometimes sitting down in the middle of the road wondering what's the point, but moving. And you have covered ground. Claim it. Not so you stop growing, but because the person who knows how fast she's already come is the person who has the most honest foundation for believing she can go further. That's your confidence inventory. Not a number, not a score, a clear-eyed look at your own evidence and the decision to let that evidence count. Okay, let's transition to the second part of today's conversation, because this month, throughout the month, so many of you have been reaching out on Instagram, on my DMs, through email, on LinkedIn, with questions about confidence, with comments about how this month is really resonating with you. And I saved some of those because I want to answer them here on the show in a way that might land for more than just the person who asked. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to read the question as it came or close to it, and then I'm going to answer it like I would if we were sitting at that table, honestly, from my own experience and without pretending that I have all figured out, because I don't. That is the truth. I'm also work in progress. I'm also working on my own self-confidence. These are real questions and they deserve real answers. So let's go. Question number 1. It says, I've been doing the small kept promise practice from week 1, and I do feel something shifting. But I still have days where the self-doubt is really loud and I feel like I'm back to square one. Is that normal? Yes, completely normal. And I want to reframe something in how you ask this question because I think it's important. You said you feel like you're back to square one, but here's what I want to ask you. Are you actually at square one, or does it just feel like that? Because those are two different things. And I think for a lot of us, a hard day or a loud self-doubt spiral can feel like evidence that none of the work we've done has taken hold. Like we've somehow lost the ground we gained. And that feeling is real. I'm not dismissing it, but the feeling is not the same as the reality. The reality is you have kept promises to yourself. Those happened. That evidence exists. A bad day doesn't erase that. A loud inner critic doesn't erase that. The deposit you made are still in the account, even when the doubt is telling you they aren't. Self-trust is not linear. It's not a straight line from less to more. It's more like if you're ever learned a physical skill. You know, there are days where it comes together and days where your body seems to have forgotten everything. But the underlying competence is still there. It's just having a hard day. What I would encourage you to do on the loud days, and I do this myself, is go back to the evidence, literally. If you've been writing down and keep promises or logging your instincts, go read it. Remind your brain of what actually happened, not just what the doubt is saying happened, because your doubt is not a reliable narrator. Your track record is. That's why I super encourage you to keep track of things. If the keeping the promise thing is what you're trying, keep a track. 7 days a week, how many days this week did you do it? And then you can go back to the days you did and use that as evidence that you have the capability of doing it, of keeping that promise. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. It says, I work in a male-dominated field and I've tried speaking up more, but I still get talked over or my ideas get credited to someone else. How do I build confidence when the environment keeps knocking it down? Okay, this one I want to answer carefully because I think it deserves more than a TD solution. First, what you're describing is real. It's documented, it's pervasive, and it is not a you problem. Being talked over, having your ideas taken up by someone else without credit, being made to feel like you have to earn your airspace in ways your male colleagues don't, that is a structural problem. And no amount of confidence work on your end fully neutralizes a structural problem. I want to say that clearly because I think a lot of women in your situation end up doing two damaging things. They either blame themselves for not being confident enough, or they exhaust themselves trying to perform a level of confidence that would never have been required of them in a different environment. Neither of those are fair and neither of them are the work. So here's what I would actually say to you. The confidence you're building this month is not primarily for those people. It's for you. It's so the environment's response to you doesn't become your belief about yourself, because those are two different things and you get to choose whether you let them merge. The environment can be hard and you can still trust yourself. The environment can be unfair and you can still know your own value. The environment can fail you clearly and you can still see yourself clearly. That's the work. Not making the environment fair, building the self-trust so that it doesn't collapse when it isn't. And practically, because I know you need more than that, a few things that I've seen work. For example, name the contribution in the moment, not defensively, but clearly. Yes, and building on what I said a moment ago, keep going. The other strategy is get allies in the room who will echo you by name and keep a record for yourself of your ideas, your contributions, your track record, not to prove it to them, but to remember it for yourself. I hope that helps. Okay, our next question. I feel confident in some areas of my life, but completely not in others. It's like I'm two different people. How do I get the confident version to show up everywhere? I love this question because I think it reveals something really important that we didn't get to fully name in this series. You are not two different people. You are one person with different amounts of evidence in different areas. That's it. The confident version of you isn't a different person. It's a version of you that has enough reps and enough track record in that domain that the self-trust is available. The not confident version is operating in territory where the evidence hasn't been built yet, which means the goal isn't to import the confident version into the other areas. The goal is to build the evidence in those areas, to start the competence confidence loop in the places where it hasn't started yet. And here's the thing that should actually encourage you. You already know you can do it because you've done it in the area where you feel confident. At some point, those areas were also unfamiliar. You were also a beginner there and you build it anyway. The same mechanism is available to you in this other hard area. You just haven't used it there yet. The other thing I would add to this, oh my God, I love this question. And I love you for sending this question. I want you to notice what's present in the area where you feel confident that it's absent in the areas where you don't. Is it experience, feedback, clear metrics so you know when you've done it? Is it permission to fail without it meaning something about your worth? Sometimes the confidence gap isn't about reps, it's about the conditions. And knowing what conditions you need is really useful information. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Question number 4. How do I stay confident after a big failure or setback? That's when mine completely disappears. Okay, this might be the most important question of the bunch because failure is the real test of everything we've built this month. When things go well, self-trust is easy. When things go well, the competence confidence loop is running smoothly. When things go well, showing up fully doesn't cost you much. It's when things don't go well that you find out whether what you've built is real or whether it was contingent on the outcome. And here's the honest truth. If your confidence is built entirely on outcomes, on things going well, on people responding positively, on your track record of success, then yes, failure will knock it down because outcomes are not within your full control. They never were. But if your confidence is built on what you've been building this month, the self-trust, which is your relationship with yourself, your competence, which is your capacity to figure things out, your presence, which is your willingness to show up, then a failure doesn't have the same access to it because those things are not contingent on the outcome. They're about you, not about the result. What I tried to do after a setback, and this took me a long time to learn, is to separate 2 questions that we tend to collapse into one. The first question is, what happened and what can I learn from it? That's the useful question. The second question, the one we tend to spiral into, is, what does this say about me? And that's the one I try to put down because here's what failure actually says about you. It says you try something. It says you were in the arena. It says you took a rep when you could have stayed safe. And the person who takes the rep and fails is further along in the competence confidence loop than the person who never took the rep at all. Failure is not the opposite of confidence. Avoidance is. Okay, last question. I'm loving this question. I have to say, this has been one of the most exciting months this year on the podcast, just based on the side conversations I'm having with people who are listening to the episodes. Okay, last question. I've done a lot of personal development work over the years and I still struggle with confidence. Sometimes I wonder if this is just who I am. Is there a point where you accept that you've just not a confident person? Let me tell you what I hear in your question. I hear exhaustion, and I want to honor that first because it's real. Doing the work for years and feeling like you're still in the same place is demoralizing. It makes you question whether the work is working. It makes you wonder if there's something fundamentally different about you that makes this harder or maybe impossible. I don't think confidence is a fixed trait. I genuinely don't. I've seen too many people change in this area, including myself, to believe that it's just who someone is. But I do think there's a question worth asking here, which is what kind of confidence work have you been doing? Because if the work has been primarily internal, mindset, beliefs, affirmations, frames, and you're not seeing change, it might be because the change you need is behavioral, not cognitive. We talk about this in week 3. You can't think your way to confidence. You have to act your way to confidence. And if the years of personal development work have been mostly in your head, changing how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, what you believe, but not in the world, not in the form of actual reps and actual evidence, then it might feel like you've been working hard and going nowhere because you've been working in the wrong part of the mechanism. The question I would like to invite you to sit with is not, am I just not a confident person? It's where have I been unwilling to take the rep? Where have I been doing the internal work instead of the external work because the external work, well, it's more scary. That's not criticism. It's just an invitation. Because if you can find that place, the place where you've been thinking instead of doing, that's where the loop can finally start. Okay, we have reached the end of the month, and I want to close this month the way we open it, by talking directly to you, not to a crowd, to you. You showed up this month. You listened. You maybe tried some things that were uncomfortable. And whether you kept every promise or missed some, whether you spoke up in every room or just one, whether you took 5 reps or 1, you engage. You decided this was worth your time and attention, and that means something. Here's what I want you to live this month with. Confidence is not a destination. It's not a fixed point you arrive at where the doubt goes quiet forever and you finally feel ready for everything. It's a practice. Like every other important thing in your life, your health, your relationships, your work, it requires showing up for it consistently, even on the days when it doesn't feel like it's working. But here's what's different about confidence than a lot of other things. Every time you show up, you leave with evidence. Every kept promise, every room you stay present in, every rep you took before you were ready, that becomes part of your record. And your record is the most honest thing about you. So here's my final ask for you. Don't leave this in April. Take the small kept promise with you into May. Take the first third rule into the next difficult meeting. Take 1 rep in the area you've been circling. Keep building the evidence, because the person you are becoming, the one who trusts herself, himself, who shows up fully, who has the track record to prove she can handle what comes. She's not a future version of you. She's you with more reps. She's you with more evidence. She's you with the habit of honoring yourself. You're closer than you think, and you've already started. I want you to know that. Like every other time, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here all month. Thank you for trusting me with this work. If this series made a difference for you, please share it with a friend, with a colleague, with someone that you know is sitting on something that they maybe haven't said yet, because they need it. And so does the room that those people are in. Also, I want to ask you if you would leave a review if you haven't yet. It generally helps more people to find the show. And come back next week, because the podcast doesn't stop here. We have a new theme next week that will be starting for the month of May. Until then, take care of yourself, honor yourself, trust yourself, and I'll see you next week here on the Leading Yourself podcast. Okay, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But before you go, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if we're not already friends on Instagram, let's get connected. You can find me as Leading Yourself Podcast. Number 2, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode. thank you so much for joining me today. I am incredibly grateful that you're in this journey with me. I want to leave you with one last thought. I want to remind you that you're destined for more and that every step that you take brings you closer to becoming that best version of yourself. Embrace each day as a chance to learn, grow, and chase your dreams. The world needs you to shine brightly, so go out and show up fully and authentically. Take care, and I'll see you next time.